I mean, didn't the Barilaro legislation of 2018 provide for, quote, less sensitive areas in Kosciuszko to be set aside for brumbies? Has that happened?
Yes, the areas were set aside, designated areas to protect certain herds, and the DNA have been done of these herds by a very enthusiastic group of volunteers. The DNA is representative of horses which are directly connected with those who went to the First World War and the Transvaal and in the Boer War. So these are an important institution in our history, Alan. They're connected to some of the most valuable history, cultural history that we have. Australia has a very shallow white man cultural history, and we need to protect it. And we're proud of it, so much proud of it that we used this image in the opening of the Olympic Games in 2000, and people applauded it.
Yes.
And here we are today with the government that's now going out to slaughter the very animals which we lauded across the world.
Good on you. I mean, if the park is home to very fragile ecosystems, as we're told, why is all the focus on the brumbies and not the feral deer and the pigs and the foxes and the goats and the rabbits and the dogs? And I mean, if the shooting of 500 horses... if the shooting of 500 horses is to occur, are the carcasses just left to rot so there's more feed for the pigs and the dogs?
Exactly, Alan, and that's one of the great threats to the surrounding landholders, and that is that the carcasses are being left there. And, you can ride through the park now and there's rotting carcasses in the waterways. The stench is unbearable, and they're asking people to go up there on their holidays. I mean, really, what the hell do they think they're doing? At the peak season, and not only is it distressing to the people who are going to visit there, but they've activated this program at a time when the mares are foaling. So not only are they shooting the mares, but the foals are orphaned and left to wander about until the wild dogs kill them.
That's right.
So again, it's not only feeding the dogs and all this. This is such a corruption of good process, Alan.
Absolutely.
And they're not listening. And I'm told that the director, Atticus Fleming, I'm told, flew out of Australia on Saturday to go somewhere for a holiday, I understand. I mean, how could you possibly do that on the eve of one of the most barbaric acts that government has ever activated in the history of Australia?
Good on you. Just repeating that point, you see, anyone who knows anything about horses, whether they're thoroughbreds or whatever, that this is the foaling season. So what Peter said, we shoot the mothers and leave the foals. They've got no mother, no milk, no nothing. So the foals then are just left to be killed by wild dogs. Peter, no government should be allowed to get away with this.
They shouldn't, Alan, and you would rely on the RSPCA at this time to come forward and take action against the government, but they're not to be seen. And we're told that the RSPCA has just had a huge increase in their government funding, and of course the suspicion is that there is a link between this additional funding that they've received and the fact that they're not acting against the government in the event of them shooting these horses. We want an inquiry. We want an inquiry into this. I mean, it needs to be exposed. If there's corruption there and undue pressure being put on the RSPCA, we need to know about it. The whole damn community knows about it because people very generously give to the RSPCA, and they'd like to think that the money that they're giving is going to a worthy cause. Well, it's not at the moment.
Correct.
They're not doing their bit.
Yeah, and if this is not a cause for the RSPCA, what is? I mean, if the numbers are disputed, Peter, shouldn't we first determine what it is we're trying to achieve?
Well, that's right. And interestingly, Alan, that I would say that the brumbies, in fact, are an asset to the national park, because if you look at the history of the fire regime in the Kosciuszko National Park, the area which is least burnt in 2003 and 2020 is the areas where the brumbies are greatest in number. In other words, an overlay of the numbers of horses in the Kosciuszko National Park and the areas that were not burnt in both those tragic fires is similar. So that you've got...
They had grazed. They'd grazed. They'd removed the fuel.
Exactly.
I mean, the argument is that's right. They'd remove the fuel. I mean, wild horses, we're told, disturb vegetation. This is what the lefties are saying. And they compete with native animals for food. Well, I would have thought, isn't, Peter, that true of the wild deer and the pigs and the goats and the dogs? And if the argument is that wild horses cause damage to watercourses, are we meant to believe, or are we just bone ignorant, that the carcasses are left to rot and feed their way into waterways? Doesn't this damage the water supply to Canberra?
Of course it does, and Senator Pocock should be well aware that if his water's tasting a little different in the next few days, that he'll be drinking the effluent off the rotting carcasses of brumbies, which he's agreed to having shot. So, you know, there's some justice, some karma in there, Alan. We can always live in hope that maybe he will get a taste in there that might remind him of the folly of what he's done.